Hey everyone, it is Hunter Fireflower. In today's video, I'll be doing a summary of the new book, Rise of Skywalker, the novelization of the movie. And in this video, I will only be covering the differences that we see in the book that are not actually in the movie. There are some extra scenes and explanations in the book that explain the actions and motives of the individuals in the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie already, you probably don't want to watch this video because I'm going to be assuming that you've seen it, and I'm not going to actually be covering the major plots in the movie, but instead just elaborate on what is actually going on. So without further ado, let's begin. One thing that is different in this Mustafar scene with Kylo Ren is that the book actually opens up with Hux talking to Pryde about why Kylo Ren is doing this and how Hux believes that this is a huge waste of time of the First Order's resources. There's a little bit more of politics going on, and we actually see that Hux always wanted to be the supreme leader in this scene, and he thinks Kylo Ren is just this reckless pawn that the First Order has, and that he's not actually the supreme leader and should be replaced. Pryde, on the other hand, believes that Kylo Ren is a good leader, and I believe it's because he has motives of sending him to the Emperor, and Pryde just wants to get under Hux's skin. The individuals that Kylo Ren are actually fighting are locals on Mustafar, and they're here protecting the legacy of Darth Vader, and this whole scene actually takes place outside of Darth Vader's castle, and the scene of him finding the Wayfinder is completely different. In the book, he actually has to go through this lake, and while he's in the lake, there's this eye spider-looking thingy that basically confronts Kylo Ren and says, "Why do you want the Wayfinder? You're not worthy enough." And meanwhile, Kylo Ren is like, "Well, I killed all of Darth Vader's minions, so I am worthy enough," and the spider thing actually just gives him the Wayfinder and then tells him to go talk to him, as in the Emperor. As Kylo Ren is going to Exegol to see the Emperor, he tells us that it's been rumored that the remains of the Imperial fleet actually went to Exegol into exile, and they're still there today, which we now know is true. One thing that we do know about the locals of Exegol, which we learned from actually Commander Pryde, is that many of the people in the Final Order were actually part of the original Empire, and they went here in exile, and they actually started a civilization, and many of their children are actually the soldiers in the Final Order. In addition, Emperor Palpatine had Pryde and other people in the First Order that would select certain individuals that were very competent, and he would have them disappear, and then they would go join the Final Order on Exegol. Lastly, everyone in Exegol kind of reminds me of the Old Republic Empire, where all of them, even though they're not Force sensitive, they're willing to serve the Sith, and they all wish to see the Sith return to the galaxy. So it kind of reminds me of super like KOTOR-y, Old Republic-esque type of thinking. One thing that was in the book that was not talked about at all in the movies was actually these vials and all of the juices that Palpatine is using to keep himself alive are actually from the Clone Wars, and his harness that he has is called an Omen harness, which was way back in the Old Republic with a Sith Lord that used it to keep his body up. It actually doesn't say his name at all, but it does tell us that it's the Omen harness, and the individual that had this harness was, I believe, in one of the Old Republic comics, so I guess he's now considered canon. We do get a little bit of a backstory of Bulio, who is the individual that gave the Resistance the information about the Empire's return. And Bulio is the overseer of this mine and this whole glacial thing, and he actually has been working for the Resistance for quite a while, and he would give surplus metals to the Resistance. One of the biggest differences in the book compared to the movies actually takes place during this scene. There's actually a whole scene that comes before this whole meditation rock thing, and it's all about Leia. Leia actually tells us from the get-go that she stopped her Jedi training because she saw a vision of her son dying at the end of her Jedi training. So instead of actually finishing her training, she kind of wanted to like make that vision not happen at all. She instead put all of her efforts towards the New Republic that happened, after the fall of the Empire, as well as the Resistance when the First Order began to rise. We also see that Leia does understand that Rey does have a darkness within her, and it kind of does hint at it that she does know that she is a Palpatine or some type of evil is lurking within her, but she doesn't quite understand what it is. And also, we get feelings from Rey that her biggest fear and the reason why she's falling to the dark side is because she does not want to fail her friends and disappoint her friends and have them die. So that's kind of what makes her fall to the dark side. It's a little kind of strange. Like, I don't really feel it in the movies that much, but the book, it explains it that way. One thing that actually was a little bit interesting is that when she does go back to her desk over here at the Resistance camp, she's thinking about her lightsaber. One thing that I did really like is that Rey in the books was thinking about having a quarterstaff that we see in the movies when she's her dark side, how it's a double-bladed saber that flips. And she was thinking how that's always what she wanted as a lightsaber, but she never got to finishing it. So I really wish they added that in the movies because it would have made more sense when we saw her as a dark side figure with the same exact lightsaber. Another big difference that we do see in the book is that the entire time Leia is alone, she actually is able to talk to Luke through the Force. And before Rey goes off to find the Wayfinder, Leia actually talks to Luke about her worries of Rey falling to the dark side. And Luke tries to reassure her that, this is not going to happen again. Like, we have faith in Rey that she will actually do what she's supposed to do and she won't fall to the dark side. In addition, Maz also reassures Leia that that's not going to happen, and we also get the hint that Maz is actually Force sensitive as well. And in addition, Maz has also been like one of the major forces of creating the Resistance and recruiting individuals since she has so many connections in the underworld. One thing that is interesting though is that Maz actually didn't want to join the Resistance, and I believe it was in Resistance Reborn, the book, where she basically turned down Poe for joining the Resistance, so I'm not quite sure why she decided to join. In this scene where we have Kylo Ren's mask getting fixed, the entire time Kylo Ren is thinking how he has this romantic relationship with Rey and how he wants to turn her to the dark side and basically have this whole romance going on thing. It's a little awkward. And then what's interesting is this whole scene is actually elaborated on. He brings his mask to Albrek, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's a Simang. I have no idea if that's how you pronounce these. But he uses Sith alchemy, and then he uses Saracen iron to actually forge Kylo's mask back together. In all of these scenes where you see Kylo and Rey going back and forth with a Force connection, it actually opens up their past as well. So every time they do this, Kylo can see into Rey's past and Rey can actually see into Ben's past. So Rey is getting glimpses of him as a child with Chewie. Meanwhile, Kylo is seeing glimpses of Rey while she was living on Jakku. When they meet Lando, he goes on this whole tirade on how he hates the First Order and how they stole his daughter away from him when she was very young, and how the First Order has been targeting old generals from the previous wars and specifically trying to take their children to kind of get back at them. I guess that kind of explains like Palpatine is a little salty that they won. So he goes on to say how he doesn't really want to join the Resistance, but he kind of does because he wants to find his daughter. So they get the dagger, and C-3PO in the book distinctly says that it actually dates back to the Old Republic, the Sith language. So I'm guessing, like, does that make the Old Republic canon now? I'm not specifically sure because now it's called the High Republic, so that's a little thing I'm a little puzzled about. In addition, when the Knights of Ren and Kylo do come to chase after Rey, we get this feeling that Finn actually can sense Kylo Ren coming, and it tells us that he actually is kind of Force sensitive, whether that he can't really use the Force, but he can actually feel and he can kind of predict what is about to happen. So I guess he's a little Force sensitive. One scene that was added in the book that was not in the movie actually takes place right after they capture Chewie. Chewie actually gets interrogated by Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren tries to force Chewie into like this dark side rage and tries to get into his mind with the Force. And at the same time, we see Kylo Ren recalling Chewie as an uncle and actually calling him Uncle Chewie. And he goes on to tell us that how Chewie had a major impact on his life, teaching him how to ride a speeder and shoot, and how he kind of still has feelings for Chewie, but at the same time, he's trying to push those feelings away. We then travel to Kijimi, and Kijimi in the book actually used to be a holy place for the Dai Bendu monks, which are part of the Dawn of the Jedi comics way back in the day. It's basically the oldest Star Wars content, which is considered legends, and maybe it even makes the faux Yor actually canon, but that's not actually confirmed in the book. All we know is that the Dai Bendu monks are considered canon now. One of the major differences in this whole Kijimi thing is how Zorri actually gets off planet. After Rey and all her friends leave Kijimi, she actually goes and meets up with her Spice Runner gang, and they're about to escape, and they decide to separate. But as Zorri is trying to escape to her ship, the entire First Order has like all of the ship and all the docking stuff. All of it is totally locked down, and actually one of the Knights of Ren decapitated one of the Spice Runners that was on her team, and one of her other Spice Runner friends, I believe her name is Luda, distracts the First Order and the Knight, and so Zorri is able to escape. She then later comes back to get Babu Frik, who is actually still repairing droids and trying to get off planet before the whole planet exploded, so I guess he got lucky that he was saved. Once the Falcon is running and Leia finds out the Falcon is running, she has a little force meeting with Luke, and Luke is telling her, come on, your time's over, go lay down, take a rest, we'll take the long sleep. Meanwhile, Leia is like, I still have work to do. And she continues on working for the Resistance, and we will later find out exactly what she's feeling when she tries to bring Ben back to the light side. In this next scene in particular with Pryde and Hux, Hux is actually happy that the Scavenger is kind of winning. He always hated Rey, but he kind of hated Ben Solo as much as Rey, and he always wanted to see Ben fail. One thing we do learn about Pryde is that the entire time he was working for the First Order, he was actually sending transmissions to the Emperor and just deleting them so no one can actually keep track of who he was talking to. And he is actually the one behind the entire Sith Eternal Fleet. He was the one that was in charge of production and keeping it all staffed. And he actually had Kylo Ren's ship, the Steadfast, augmented with these extra engines and stuff so he actually could travel to Exegol. One thing that was a little interesting about this Kefbur, I believe is how you pronounce the name of the planet, this planet actually used to be all underwater, and that's why you kind of see these big waves. But when the Death Star actually crashed on the planet, it's assumed that the Death Star caused this huge tectonic shift in the planet, which is what made all of the land that you actually see in this scene today. I thought that was a little interesting. One thing that was actually explained in the book was that C-3PO gave her the coordinates of where to stand with the Sith dagger so that it would actually work. I mean, it doesn't even put it in the movie. I always thought this scene was terribly done because you're just like, how does that make any sense? But apparently she had the coordinates of where to exactly stand for this thing to work. I mean, what's up with all the cryptic stuff when you should just tell them where to go, it's really weird. During this fight between Rey and Kylo Ren, we have a whole scene of Leia actually talking to Luke Skywalker, and Luke is like, come on, like, you have to be done, like, you've done your part, let Rey, she can do the rest of it, and Leia's just saying, no, I have one more thing I have to do, I have to try and turn Ben to the light side. She then goes on to say that, her stepfather or whatever, Bail Organa, told her to embrace her destiny, told her to join the rebels, and then she joined the Resistance, and she's not going to give up. When Leia does pass, she is welcomed by Luke Skywalker as well as all of the Jedi of the past welcome her to, I guess, what you call the other side or the Force world, basically just welcoming her to, become a Force ghost. And in this scene in the book, we also hear Kylo Ren's thoughts of how Snoke filled his lives with, your parents never loved you. They only cared about the Resistance and the rebellion. I'm the only one that loved you. And this is the first instance where actually we see Kylo Ren doubting Snoke and saying, my parents actually did love me because why would my mother kill herself or, try to kill herself so she could try to communicate with me. So this is his first sense of falling to the light side, that people actually do love him and that Snoke was lying to him the entire time. Most of the book is exactly the same as the movie from here on. There are a few little differences. We get Poe's thoughts of how he is incredibly nervous that he's going to be this general. We always got this feeling from Poe that he was cocky and knew what he was doing, but this is the first time where he's actually kind of doubting his abilities to lead the Resistance in this final battle, and he's scared that he's going to fail his friends and everyone is going to die and they could blame him. Poe also tells us that his parents are actually part of the rebellion and he's kind of living in their footsteps in the Resistance. We also learn that he was actually trained by Wedge Antilles as a pilot. There is a whole scene about Lando, and Lando does talk to Poe as you see in the movie right here, but Lando actually goes on the Falcon and he is noticing the differences of when he owned the ship versus when Han owned the ship and the Resistance, and he's like, they added extra bunks here, that's a little different, this is a little different, I remember when I used to live here and actually was piloting the ship, and he goes into Chewie's quarters and he kind of sifts through his stuff a little sneaky, and he actually sees a image of Chewie holding a young Ben Solo, and it kind of touches his heart because he kind of remembers when Ben Solo was this innocent child and how he was actually part of Ben's life as well. The majority of this final battle scene is actually exactly like the movie. There are a few differences though. When all of the ships come out of hyperspace that are trying to aid the resistance, there are actually a few notable ships that you will all recall from previous books and movies and even video games. We have Phantom Squadron, which we did see Wedge Antilles in there. We also have the Ghost, which is from the TV show Rebels, with Hera, I'm assuming, was maybe the pilot, or their son. I don't know what the name of their son is, but he was probably the pilot. We also have Alphabet 2, which is from Alphabet Squadron, which is a novel. We also have Zay from Inferno Squad. She was actually in the Inferno Squad book, and I believe she might have been in the video game as well. And we also have Kaz, which is from the TV show Resistance. I did really like this scene in particular of Kylo finding the Knights of Ren in the book, because the Knights actually go easy on him, and Kylo's like, hey, they're going easy on me. They're letting me get up and try to attack them again. And he just tells us how the Knights were actually never his friend. Even though he was the leader of the Knights, they always served Sidious and not him. And they always thought that he was kind of like this pushover that was just, he had this fancy name, that's why people thought he was powerful. And the Knights always thought themselves as being better than Kylo Ren. While we have this scene of Rey and Ben fighting Sidious, Sidious actually goes into Rey's mind and just tells her exactly how his whole master plan worked out. So apparently, while he was ruling the Empire, he actually had his clone body being made on Exegol with all of his Sith followers. And so if he was to die, he was actually just going to send his Force spirit into these clone bodies, which he did when he died at the end of Return of the Jedi, but these bodies were never able to hold his entire spirit, so his bodies kind of started to get corrupted, and that's why you see like his hands kind of dying and his whole body is just kind of deteriorating. It's because he's so evil and forced energy that it just can't contain him. So he had all of his Sith minions creating clones of himself to try and like find a solution for a more permanent body, and so what they ended up doing was they ended up changing his DNA slightly and making a clone for him, but it actually just ended up to be his son, and he couldn't actually take that body because his son is not force sensitive. Sidious always hated his son. He thought his son was so ordinary, and so he just kind of like threw him to the side, but then his son ended up having a daughter, which we know is Rey, and he wanted to use Rey as a body to put his force energy into after he died. Lastly, one of the big reveals in this book is between Lando and Janna. We always thought that Janna might be his daughter, especially when you read the book, it kind of like tries to link it up that, oh, you know, maybe she's his daughter and stuff, because he was talking about how he was missing a daughter and everything, but it actually doesn't confirm it at the end of the book, but instead it just leaves it open for another book of Lando and her going off to reconnect all these First Order troops. So I'm guessing that this is going to be like a comic or another novel. I was really hoping that it was actually going to be his daughter, because it would just make everything just click a little better. But anyways, guys, that's it for this video. I really hoped you enjoyed the video. If you liked the video, please give a thumbs up and leave a comment of what you liked, or if you have any questions regarding the whole novelization, I'm more than welcome to answer any questions you have. I will be doing a review of Thrawn. I'll be publishing that in probably sometime this week, so I'll do a whole review of that book as well. But if you haven't already, please subscribe and go check out my other videos. I make videos regarding Legends and canon content, regarding books, comics, as well as TV shows and movies. So if you haven't already, please go check out those videos. They're all based on Star Wars content. So if you like Star Wars, you would probably like my other videos. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay frosty.